So Xbox reportedly discussing internally whether to return to exclusives. So almost like the Nintendo and Nintendo saying, "Oh, internally we're giving fake info." This is another thing. You throw it out there. Um, you let that conversation happen to see what happens. And there's a few takes to this. I like the idea of playing any game anywhere. It shouldn't matter. But and also I think the console market is potentially dying, will die. So the idea is, well, we need to kind of follow the future, platform agnostic services for your games. Okay, that's one issue. The other point that is very interesting is the cost of the consoles are now so expensive to where something like Game Pass or PlayStation, if they have PlayStation Plus, they have the cloud streaming now. Like if you don't have a console, I don't know. Anyway, just having a streaming service available, a streaming game without having to buy a console, like GeForce Now, it's cheaper for someone to use GeForce Now to play their games than it is to probably buy a PC and upgrade the PC. Okay. And then we have the report that came out about how much money Rockstar, for one, but also Sony makes, with uh, certain games on PlayStation. And what I'm trying to get at is so many people play GTA Online or Fortnite on PlayStation. And that's like an avenue. And I think it was, that there's more players that are actually spending money on online stuff for GTA Online on PlayStation than they are on PC by a wide margin. In fact, Xbox Series beats, or is it Xbox One, beats PC. So what I'm trying to say is there are these specific silos that the video game publishers and companies can make a lot of money off of. It's like Sony sees, we just got to have a Sony platform out there to be the delivery mechanism for these services games that people tend to play on. So it's almost like this repositioning that can happen. And so let me add this other part. So this all started by me saying Xbox reportedly discussing internally whether to return to exclusives. So I wonder how much the Sony backing out and of putting their games on PC and everything, and kind of going back to seeing the money they make because they have an ecosystem. This could revitalize console gaming if each party is taking it as seriously. So, and this goes back to this other point. Microsoft was the one to kind of push this idea of Game Pass, play anywhere, doesn't matter. And that is the future. That most likely is the future. But that transition is probably happening a bit too quickly for someone like Sony. And Nintendo's got some time, even though they're getting to a point where those expectations are super high. But what then is happening is Sony is then like, okay, we know what works. We just got to latch on to that. And that means we can't follow the future yet of what Microsoft is doing. And then I'm sure Microsoft is seeing this is sort of creating this odd situation in the console space so that let's say they're like, okay, let's go back to exclusives. Let's see if that's a way that when we come out with our next platform, and we can see that every generation. And that's the other point of this. Like PS2 was big, but 360 was big, right? And then PS3 wasn't so hot. And then when the Xbox One came out, that wasn't so hot. And here's the other thing about this too, to kind of prove my point about Game Pass and what Microsoft's doing to move to the future. During the Xbox One reveal, their whole idea was you could have these digital games that you could have transferable, and you can use means or retailers like GameStop to transfer your digital games. Looking back, at that time, people were like, no way, because physical was still big enough. But Microsoft knew the future. Nowadays, I'm pretty sure gamers, we would all like the idea of being able to resell or trade our keys, our digital ownership of games. That's what Microsoft was trying to do. They backed off because people didn't like that. That allowed the PS4 to kind of get ahead. In a time where then game budgets are super, super, super high, and to make money, again, Microsoft is trying to go another path to like ease that sort of overhead. So then Sony like, okay, well, to make money, we're going to double down on live service. You see, Microsoft wasn't doing that. They were being very careful. That's why people are like, well, Microsoft didn't really release too much. Well, it's like, well, actually, neither did Sony, because what they did failed or got shut down. And so Microsoft has just been, okay, well, let's just acquire studios. Let's just have good selection. I mean, if you look at Game Pass versus PS Plus, and it's my opinion, Game Pass just offers so much more, especially when it comes to newer releases, like Replaced is on here. That could be on PS Plus. But so anyway, what I think is happening is Microsoft's like, okay, we're going to have to, I think the economy, whatever, because of high console prices, they're going to have to delay the idea of making gaming these streaming services. Agnostic, play on any device streaming services. And I think it's because console prices or hardware has gone up, console prices have gone up. It then makes an economy where people are going to want to choose one or the other when it comes to consoles, to play on a device. And not just consoles, like just to play on a device. So if Sony's still out there being like, well, you just buy a PlayStation, and Microsoft's like, well, you can kind of play anywhere because games are going to be anywhere, people are just going to buy PlayStations. And I mean, I'm talking about mainstream, like kind of the mainstream buyer, not someone like me, because I will buy them all. So anyway, I think this is like my commentary on what I think is going on. And I do think, even though I prefer the idea of games on any platform, whatever, if this is healthy for the industry right now, maybe it's best to do that. I think I think it kind of goes in line with what's going to be happening next with hardware from Sony and Xbox. They're making their high-end PC versions, but then we hear about, Sony's portable. So what is going to be that? Is that going to be an entry-level device? I'm curious how they're going to do that, or how much the PS5 is still going to remain, a main console. Just because the price has gone up on the PS5, PS5 Pro, does Sony expect them to continue to sell PS5s? So there's a lot of stuff still up in the air. But anyway, I think there's another thing here, because even on the dashboard for something, Xbox related, it talked about Xbox exclusives having a day one release on Game Pass. So it's just saying, hey, if you have Game Pass, you're going to get day one releases of exclusives. That sounds pretty specific. And I think there's probably some games that were already, I think, what was it? Yeah, Forza Horizon 6. I think that had already been in development and apparently sold very well. 5 sold very well on PS5. So I'm sure Microsoft is just going to keep letting that go. And then I remember wasn't there a PlayStation title that Sony canceled right at the last minute that was going to be released on PC because they want to stay with exclusive? So I really think, this is really going to happen. It's very interesting stuff. Very interesting stuff.